To make ordinary iron indestructible, you cannot be gentle. You must plunge it straight from the furnace into freezing water. The sudden shock should shatter the metal down to its core. But if the composition is pure, it doesn't crack. It emerges tempered. In 1983, a conservative German sedan was thrown face first into that exact same fire, forced into an 8-day mechanical nightmare in the scorching Italian concrete. But this block did not break. 1983 was the moment the world finally witnessed the finished machine. But the fire had been burning in the dark long before anyone noticed the smoke. In the late 1970s, the engineers at Stuttgart were looking at the dirt. Mercedes-Benz was a house built on absolute, unshakable prestige. They built heavy luxury saloons for heads of state and bulletproof diesel taxi cabs that could run for 1,000,000 miles without a complaint. But they wanted the mud. They engineered a new compact platform, the W201. The plan was simple: build a lightweight agile chassis, throw it into the brutal wilderness of the World Rally Championship, and bring home a trophy. But while they were fine-tuning their rear-wheel drive creation, a sudden shockwave rolled out from the forests of Europe. Audi introduced the Quattro. In a single weekend, all-wheel drive and turbocharging changed the physics of racing forever. Mercedes looked at their elegant rear-wheel drive blueprint and realized it was obsolete before it ever touched a single gravel stage. Years of engineering stood on the brink of the scrap heap. But instead of surrendering, the board of directors ordered a pivot. They turned away from the dirt, locked their eyes on the flat asphalt of the German touring car championship, and ran face first into a trap. To legally race on the tarmac, the rulebook was merciless. They couldn't just build a few prototypes. They had to mass produce the race car. They had to sell a street-legal weapon to the public. The taxi cab company was going to war. But to build a warrior, you need a hat. But Mercedes did not have one. Their standard 2.3-liter four-cylinder engine was a dependable stubborn iron block. It was designed to idle for 12 hours straight in a Frankfurt traffic jam, not scream down a straightway. It had durability, but it completely lacked anger. So Mercedes did something highly uncharacteristic. They took their iron block, packed it in a crate, and shipped it across the English Channel to the racing wizards at Cosworth. The British engineers ripped the head off the German motor. In its place, they cast a completely new lightweight alloy head, 2 overhead camshafts, 16 valves, massive breathing intake ports. It was a mechanical hybrid, a conservative German bottom end built to survive an apocalypse, married to a high-strung, high-revving British racing mind. When the engine returned to Stuttgart, it had a completely new personality. It didn't push out astronomical horsepower. Clearing 0 to 60 took a modest 8 seconds. But it didn't feel like a taxi anymore. It revved all the way to a 7,000 RPM red line. Inhaling air with a sharp metallic induction snarl that echoed through the cabin. The engine was ready. Now the rest of the machine had to match it. A race car on the street demands a specific kind of compromise. It must be sharp enough to hold a line at triple-digit speeds, yet composed enough to satisfy a customer who expects a Mercedes-Benz. The engineers threw out the standard components and built an entirely new anatomy. They installed a 5-speed Getrag gearbox, but they gave it a racing dogleg pattern. First gear was moved left and down. This configuration kept second, third, fourth, and fifth in a straight lightning fast-hitch pattern. On the track, a driver would never miss a crucial shift. Underneath the rear deck, they debuted a revolutionary 5-link suspension matrix that changed automotive geometry forever. To keep the car flat through high-speed sweeps, they added a complex high-pressure hydropneumatic self-leveling system. An engine-driven hydraulic pump continuously pressurized the rear struts, fighting body roll with mechanical fluid pressure. It didn't lean into corners, it resisted them. It sat low, stiff, and balanced, a machine designed to keep its footprint pinned perfectly to the pavement, no matter how hard the road tried to throw it off. The aesthetic was defined by a man named Bruno Sacco, the head of Mercedes styling. Sacco understood that true authority does not need to scream. He refused to dress the car in loud, flashy sports car colors. You could not buy it in red, blue, or yellow. The factory offered only 2 options: smoke silver or a deep, menacing blue-black metallic. He wrapped the conservative body panels in subtle, highly functional aerodynamics, flared wheel arches to house wider tracks, deep side skirts to channel air, a clean sharp wing integrated into the rear trunk lid. Inside the cabin, the luxury was stripped of its fat. The plush soft leather bench seats were torn out. In their place, Mercedes bolted down 4 individual deeply contoured bucket seats built by Recaro. The rear row was split by a hard plastic partition. This was strictly a car for 4 people who intended to go fast. Directly below the dashboard tiles, a cluster of 3 small gauges sat flush in the console: a voltmeter, an oil temperature needle, and a digital stopwatch. Every time you turned the key, the cockpit reminded you of its true purpose. You weren't driving to the office, you were managing a lap time. In August 1983, weeks before the world would ever see the car at the Frankfurt Auto Show, Mercedes took a massive gamble. They needed to prove that this high-revving British engine was not fragile. They needed to show the world that German durability was still alive inside this racing hybrid. They secretly shipped 3 identical factory-spec models to the Nardo Ring, a massive high-speed asphalt circle baking in the stifling Mediterranean heat. They started the engines, pinned the accelerators to the floor, and they did not lift. For 8 days and 8 nights straight, the 3 cars ran at absolute maximum throttle. They only stopped for 20 seconds at a time to swap exhausted drivers and dump fuel into the tank. Every 17,000 kilometers, crews executed a lightning-fast 5-minute full service, swapping tires, oil, and spark plugs on an engine that was white hot. It was a brutal, non-stop mechanical assault. 50,000 kilometers of continuous high-revving friction. After 201 hours of continuous screaming, the lead car crossed the finish line. It had averaged a sustained speed of 154 miles per hour for just over 8 days straight. The Cosworth Heart did not skip a single beat. 3 world records and 9 international class records lay shattered on the asphalt. Mercedes hadn't just built a sports car, they had built an indestructible machine. When the 119E16 valve officially hit the racing circuits, it was a revelation. It was composed, reliable, and devastatingly effective. Its instant success caught the rival engineers over in Munich completely off guard. Panic inside the BMW Motorsport division forced them to quickly build a response, a vehicle that became the iconic E30 M3. What followed was a brutal high-revving arms race. Mercedes kept pushing, widening the body and escalating the power until their ultimate Wild Evolution 2 model completely dominated the field, crushing the competition and sweeping the 1992 championship podium. But the Mercedes was the catalyst. It was the spark that ignited the greatest touring car rivalry the world has ever seen. Yet history is a fickle storyteller. Today the world remembers the rival M3 with romantic obsession, while the baby Benz sits quietly in its shadow. But it remains the forgotten pioneer. Mercedes built less than 20,000 of these original 16-valve machines before the era moved on. Today, the brand has returned to its traditional posture of modern electronics and heavy luxury, which leaves the 2.316 standing as a beautiful defiance, a brief window in time when a conservative house of luxury partnered with a British race shop ran full throttle through the scorching Italian heat of Nardo for 8 days straight, and left the establishment chasing a shadow.